down, a good sized handful of us went down in January, and were there when Scaliger was made a barony. King Stephen McHenry came, escorted by Hilary of Serendip and William the Lucky. Big names back in those days. If you've heard of them, it's probably because of me. Neither one of them are particularly active right now. I don't know why William isn't, but which was kind of highly exciting for us because we'd never met a king before, and those of us who drove down in my car ended up staying for several hours with the king and William and Stephen, just hanging out until people started getting off work and came and took us to our various places.
Right.
Not that we talked about the SCA, we were so green we didn't know what to ask. We talked about Dorothy Dunnet and gaming. Stephen was, if you look at the original RuneQuest books, he's listed as one of the original playtesters. So,
Wow.
yeah. And we were playing RuneQuest up here, so we did talk about RuneQuest. The following spring was the Battle of Brownwater, which is the first time Winter's Gate went down in defeat.
Why Brownwater?
Because we were at Harding Lake and we churned up the mud pretty good.
Nice.
The following year, the second battle was the Battle of Weeping Skies because it rained most of the time. Those are the only two that were named. Yeah, we had a archery was banned during war scenarios at the battle after the Battle of Brownwater because although we had very few people, Selenia moved over to our side to try and make it fair. She had a bow, and she took Kielsen out with the first shot of the war, in the first battle, nailing him in the head, and she didn't like that, and it was banned for years. We also had our own ballista. Michiel Younger of Alton and his two Shield brothers had made a ballista. They threw flower balls. We went down in defeat, but we went down in style. Oh yeah. The really crowning moment was the beginning of the activities on Friday night after everybody settled. We had several pipers from the Pipers Band pipe our contingent into the campfire. Yeah, the Iscanians were suitably impressed, but they still beat the shit out of us. We were dead. We had to raise another whole generation for the next war, and then another one after that. It wasn't until, what, 8 years ago or so that we finally won a war? When Tarim was Baron? I don't know what exactly that year that was now. But that was the first time we'd actually won a war. We haven't had one since. We need to keep rebuilding our numbers. Okay, so Hugh and Selenia were their founding Baron and Baroness. Hugh of the North and Selenia of the Silver Tree. Battle of Brownwater was in AS-14. The first peers were made that fall when Radnor was king and he came up during his first reign. And he knighted Ragnar the Rogue, highly impressive, and he made a pelican out of Shireen de Conrac. Those were the first peers in Oertha. 2 knights had been made earlier, but they were knighted in Aidenveld, although they lived up here then. They had lived down there originally. Anyhow, they knew the king. The king knew them in Aidenveld. And that was Ulrich and Heinrich Dwarf Armpitsbane. Known as Armpitsbane because he had a sweeping up blow that would cut you off at the underarm. Yes, indeed, Al is the word there from the fighters.
And condition of armor in 1979 was probably interesting.
Well,
too.
even now there's not necessarily
Even
stuff
now,
covering
we
your
don't
armpit.
technically-
You can get underneath there.
Good.
And he was a lefty and he did that and
Oh,
was what he was
lefty
known
too.
for.
Oh.
Yes. That's why he was Heinrich Dwarf Armpitsbane. He was a dwarf, of course, because he was over 6 foot tall, which is, I assume there are still dwarves, and I assume that they are still over 6 foot tall. Needless to say, Blinks was not one at 5'8", but Ulrich was at 6'7".
How do you fight someone tall?
Oh yeah, Ulrich was tall and skinny, and at one point he had a shield made out of what we used to call elven metal, street signs, that had the arrow pointing up on the inside of his shield as in he would flash it to, hit the head. Ulrich had his own style. Yeah. The following January, which I think was still AS-16, or AS-14, somewhere around there anyhow, Ulrich won what was the Escallion tourney of Lord Defender of Escalia and the Queen of Love and Beauty. And when he was circleted by Einrich, he declared himself the Lord Defender of the North. This is the first time that concept arose officially. I immediately wrote Maria and said, when did you decide we were going to be the North? And she wrote back, I don't know. It was news to us too. This was also very typical of the trolls in what was going to be Svalbard. So that was the first official sort of Lord Defender of the North. In May of 16, Wintersgate got its first royal visit from William de Lucky and Andrea of Claremont, which sent us well into a tizzy, but we had a wonderful time with them. I believe at that point, as far as I can tell from the record, was when we probably petitioned to become a province. We did not go straight to barony, we went to province first. Because I believe that later that summer, William came back in the summer and both times as king or one, yeah, overlapping, still the same king, and granted our petition to become a province. It was much quicker and easier back in those days. We, of course, by then already had our arms, so that wasn't a problem, because we had a really good herald to begin with. It was in AS-15 that Lord Defender Dyrune and his Lady Victoria presented the very first Oerthan Awards, the Oerthan Order of Grace. They were presented to Hugh and Selenia. So we're beginning to codify things that are going to become part of the principality. Somewhere around in there, at AS-15, I would have to do some real digging to figure it out exactly. A contingent of us went down to Samhain in Scalia, and after the event itself broke up, because we had to stay awake until the sun rose to save our souls from the dead souls who were looking for available bodies, we moved over to Maria's abode and stayed up all night, which was extremely, that was the night we had to put the clock back. And we knew logically that the sun wasn't going to rise in any less hours, but it certainly felt like we added an hour that we had to stay up. During that evening, we came up with the concept of the Council of the North. I believe it was our herald who suggested the actual idea, and we all jumped on it. We were aiming for principality eventually. We didn't know what we needed to do exactly, but we thought we could start organizing. And we decided that if you were a functioning group, regardless of whether you were official or not, that you would have representation on the council, that each group would have 2 members, one of whom was the seneschal, and one could be chosen any way the group wanted to choose. Berengaria was our second member, but I had no idea why. As seneschal, of course, I was a member of the Council of the North. The Trolls, Flinks was the seneschal, and Ulrich was the other one. I have no idea why, he probably just declared it so, knowing him. And I don't remember offhand who the rest of them were. It varied from time to time, because the Council of the North survived for a while. Do you have an announcement to make, or you said, okay. Okay. We took this idea back to our various groups, and they all approved it, and the Council of the North then proceeded to function. We met at the Lord Defender tourneys, which were already set in January and July, because we took over the Escallion times. Took over the title, took over their dates, which is, and slowly morphed it from the Queen of Love and Beauty to the Lady of the Snows. Things like that happened over time. By